Hi, and welcome to another Excel how-to video. In a previous video, we talked about how to make an X-bar control chart, in which you see here on the screen. In this video, we're going to talk about how to make its companion piece, the R chart. And these two things sort of work together in a system called statistical process control to tell us how our process is running. Not necessarily are we making good parts, but are we making consistent parts is really the goal we're looking for. And we can see we can gather a lot of visual data from these two simple charts. So again, we've got the X bar chart up, and if you haven't watched that video, I highly recommend it. There's a lot of just basic Excel how to in that video, the end product of which is a usable X bar chart. But I'm going to go ahead and click back to my data sheet, which is sheet 1. And this is sort of where that video left off. I had an original data set that included these columns, the time stamp, and then samples 1, 2, and 3. We calculated X bar and R, the range, and then we calculated these variables that are used in the equations for the control lines. So the center line and the upper and lower control limits for the X bar chart. And these are just sort of, screenshots that I took from another presentation just to sort of reference those equations so I didn't have to tab back and forth. So we need to create an R chart. And to do that, we are literally, in the previous video, we just used this R in order to calculate this R bar, the average range. In this case, R is what we want to plot. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select all of these timestamps. And I take that back because we did split it by shift. So I'm going to select 7 to 3 o'clock, which is 1500. I'm going to hold Control and select the R column from 7 to 3 o'clock. I'm going to come up to my toolbar and hit Insert. And the last option sort of under Charts is a scatter chart. I'm going to insert that. So now I've got my first shift data points plotted. So getting started with this chart is just about that simple. I am now going to right click and select my data. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to edit this to name that data set, and I'm going to call it first shift. Okay. Now I'm going to add a data set. This will be second shift. And I'm going to add my X values, which will be 4 to 11, typically for second shift. It helps if I can fix that. Notice I forgot to click down here, so it thinks I want those cells that I just selected to be part of the name. I don't. But to fix that without completely redoing everything, I can select this. I can Control X to cut it out. I'm going to get rid of that plus sign. And I can do equals and paste it in here. So easily fixed. Y values now, delete everything in the Y values before we even try to select things. And we're going to go from 4 o'clock to 11 o'clock and press OK. And you can see the orange popped up. So I've got second shift now plotted. I'm going to add a third data set for third shift. The X values now are going to be from midnight to 6 a.m. the next morning. The Y values, let's delete everything that's in there. And we need to go from midnight to 6 a.m. Okay and okay. And now I've got all three shifts ranges plotted. So range, again, is the maximum measurement from this sample set minus the minimum measurement. So that's what I've got plotted, is the range of each sample set, each set of 3 measurements. So now we need to put the lines, the things that make this a control chart. We need to get those in place. So we're going to start with the center line in this case. The center line is just R bar, which we've already calculated because we needed it for the X bar chart, and it's right here. That's our R bar value. So I'm going to right click on my plot. I'm going to select data. I'm going to add a data set. I'm going to call it CL for center line. X values. In this case, I don't need a whole column worth of data. I just need 2 points. Remember, 2 points define a line. And at the end of the day, this is going to be a straight line. So I'm just going to press equals. The X value, I'm going to grab the minimum time, comma, the maximum time. Y values, again, always delete everything that's in there just to be safe, equals my R bar, comma, R bar. Press OK. I now have yellow dots here. We can just see them under this dialog box. If I move it, it's even better. We can see that I've got the yellow dots here that will end up representing my center line. So that's as much as I can do right now, because now I have to do a little more math. I need lower control limits and upper control limits. So I know I need R, lower control limit, and I need R, upper control limit. Lower control limit. So that's what this formula over here is telling me. The LCL is a constant D3 times R bar. D3 is a constant that is based on the normal distribution from statistics. There is a formula that we could use to calculate it, but sort of this table that I've pasted in here for reference sort of pre-calculates it for a whole bunch of different sample sizes. So we could do the math, but we don't have to, because we've been doing basically this level of statistics for 100 years or better now. And people have come up with reference charts so that we don't have to worry about getting that deep into the weeds. We can just look up what D3 is. And then when we do the upper, we can look up what D4 is. So again, this chart here, this table is used based on the sample size per group. So each group has 3 samples. So I'm going to go to the sample size 3, and I'm going to grab that D3. And in this case, it is 0. So since I'm multiplying D3, which is 0, times R, I know that my lower control limit is going to be 0. And basically what that's telling me is that my range is so small, right? My range here is so small that it's basically hitting 0. I mean, I technically don't have a lower control limit because it's right at 0. And I can't go below 0 with a range because, again, the range is the maximum minus the minimum. So the closest that 2 measurements could possibly be would be if all 3 of these were absolutely identical. All 3 measurements were the same. My range would be 0. It can't be negative, right? The biggest measurement minus the smallest has always got to be 0 or higher, a positive number. So 0 is kind of the smallest it gets. The upper control limit over here on this screenshot is D4 times R bar. And D4, again, I can come over and look. I've got my sample size of 3. D4 is 2.5746. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in its own cell so that I can reference in D4, 2.5746. Enter. Okay. Now in my UCL, I'm going to equal, and I'm going to grab that cell, click on it. So I've got my H7 cell times that shift 8 times, I need the little star for a times R bar, which is right above it. So I'm going to click that cell, H6, and hit enter. There's my upper control limit. So I've got my lower control limit and my upper control limit, just sort of that fast. Now to get them on the chart, I'm going to right click the chart and select data. I'm going to add series name UCL, and I'm actually technically in this, I'm not going to add a lower control limit at all because it's going to be on the x-axis and we won't see it anyway by the time we're done. So, but for the x values, we're going to do the same thing. Grab the lowest timestamp, comma, biggest timestamp. Y values, delete everything. I'm going to move this a little, and I'm going to grab that upper control limit, comma, and grab that upper control limit again. So now I've got these 2 blue dots, which represent my upper control limit. That, just like with the X bar chart, we now have all the data on this graph that we need. So from here on out, it's strictly formatting. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to sort of skip to where we were, and I'm going to move this to its own sheet. The X bar chart we put on its own sheet, and that was mostly to get the sort of scaling correct. So I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to right click and I'm going to hit move chart. And rather than object in, I'm going to select a new sheet and I'm going to call this the R chart. And Excel will automatically move it to basically its own piece of paper. So now we're all about the formatting. I'm going to select my first shift data by clicking one of these data points in the blue. I'm going to come over to the fill in line. I want a solid line. It's black, which is what I want anyway. I'm going to drop the thickness down. I recommend something like 0.75. Then I'm going to come here to marker, and I want to change the fill to black and the line to black. So now I've got, if I deselect it, I've got black dots with a black line. And I'm going to do the same thing for these other two data sets. So click on one of the orange dots for second shift, fill bucket, solid line, shrink it down. It's already black, so we're good to go. Markers, options, change the orange to black, and come down and change the other orange to black. And I'm going to click on third shift and do the exact same thing. So change the gray to black, change the other gray to black, and underline, add a solid line and shrink it down to 0.75 so that they match. And I can just keep going at this point. I don't have to deselect. I can just select the blue lines for my upper control limit. Now, in the control limits, again, the points, I don't want to see at all because those points technically are not data points. They really only exist so that we can force Excel to put a line there. So under marker, in this case, marker options, I'm going to select none, so they go away completely. And then under line, I'm going to select solid line. I'm going to shrink it down again to 0.75, and I'm going to make it dashed just to differentiate it as a control limit. I'm going to do the same thing for the center line. So select one of the orange or yellow dots for the center line, solid line, shrink it down. Marker, options, no marker. And I forgot about the dash, so go back to line and make it dashed. Now I can deselect. I've got a center line that's dashed. I've got an upper control limit that's dashed. I don't really need to worry about the lower control limit in this case because it is 0. It's going to line up on that axis anyway, on the x-axis, and we're not going to see it. So I'm not even going to worry about plotting it on this graph. Now, in the future, if you wanted to sort of set up a template so that this could be used for any control chart you need to use in the future, any X bar and R chart, it might be a good idea to put it in there because then you can allow Excel as the data changes, and if that lower control limit were to ever lift off of 0, because these limits can change as our data changes. Remember, we calculated them in the first place, right? If I go back to my data, these X bars are calculated based on the measurements we took. So if we take another day's measurements and our X bars and our R's are different, which they will be, our limits could change as well. So if we wanted to set up a template, we would do that and put the lower, even though it's 0, we'd still put the lower control limit on the chart so that we're prepared and it sort of updates itself automatically if it ever lifts off of 0 in the future. But for now, I'm going to leave it off. I don't need to worry about that. And so the rest is really just formatting. I'm going to go ahead first and fix my axes because just like we saw before, Excel sort of freaks out a bit with the date and time axis because it uses that 1900 date system where a date isn't really a date. It's calculated as a number of days since 1900. So it gets a little tricky. I'm basically going to change these limits to match what the X bar chart is. So I'm going to select this and remind myself what those limits are. So axis options, this will be the low limit, 45,000. And again, that, as far as Excel is concerned, that is a date. But again, what that represents is number of days since January 1st, 1900, which is a weird thing to sort of wrap our minds around. But that's how Excel views a date. So what this is saying is it's 45,756.25 days since 1900, and that's to get to 6 a.m. on April 9th, 2025. So 45,756 days ago, it was 1900. But on the R chart, let me make sure I copied that. Select that lower minimum and copy. I'm going to go right to my R chart and put it right in as my minimum. Paste it in, enter, see it updated now. I'm now at 4/9/2025 at 6 a.m. on my minimum here. I'm going to go back to my X bar and do the same thing for the maximum. Under axis options, copy that maximum, go to my R chart, and under axis options, paste that in. And press enter, and we'll see it update. So, and again, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense the way that Excel has calculated these automatic divisions. So I'm going to make that match X bar as well, where we did an hour per division, which is probably in this case makes the most sense since that's when we took our measurements. So again, rather than recalculate all these times and what they mean, I'm just going to copy it directly from my X bar chart, So for the major units, that's the number I want. The other one, the minor units, I'm not showing the minor units anyway. So I can let Excel automatically calculate those because they don't show up. But on my R chart again, axis options for major units, I'm going to paste that, press enter. Now they are, I think we would agree, somewhat less than readable. So we'll angle them the same way we did on the X bar chart. We do that by coming over here to the alignment, size, and properties, and then under alignment, we're going to leave this as horizontal, but when it is set to horizontal for text direction, we can also change the angle. So I'm going to set this to a minus 45 degrees to get it angled the same way that our other chart is. And this direction is probably the most common angle to sort of arrange dates. There's no real hard and fast rule, but when we have dates and times like this, a 45-degree angle with the time being closest to the axis is pretty close to standard, even though there's no real. So we've got this sort of configured now. Now, again, we need axis labels. Always, 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 we need axis labels. We need these charts to do what we call stand on their own. I should be able to print this off and hand it to somebody that I haven't told anything about this chart, and they should be able to see exactly what this is telling them. To do that, we need to add a title, we need a y-axis label, we need an x-axis label. So I'm going to select the chart again. I'm going to come over to chart design on my ribbon. I'm going to add a chart element, and I'm going to start with a title. Title above chart. When it comes in, it's automatically selected, so I can just start typing. This is going to be an R chart for attribute 1. I would be more descriptive than this, but honestly, with this data set, the way that it was provided, I don't know what attribute 1 is. I just know that it was called attribute 1. If I knew, say, that it was the, injection molded outer diameter, that's what I would call it, R chart, injection mold outer diameter. But in this case, all I know is that this is called attribute 1, so that's what I'm going to title my chart. I'm going to come back up to add a chart element. In this case, an axis title, horizontal for the x-axis. Again, it is automatically selected as soon as I insert it, so I can just start typing. This I'm just going to call date and time. And one more, I'm going to insert an axis title for primary vertical. That's my y-axis. It is selected, so I can just type. I'm going to call this the range in inches. And inches is a guess. It didn't tell me in my data set, so I always recommend when labeling your axis, you put units in there. Like it could be millimeters for all I know, but I'm just making it up and making sure that I get a unit in there for the sake of completeness. So this chart, again, is now complete. You would be perfectly acceptable to use this chart as is in most cases. So like the X bar chart, though, I'm a little more picky. If you remember that video, and this is the disclaimer that from this point out is me being picky about formatting. So the rest of this is just sort of making it look what I think is pretty. The first thing is I'm going to get rid of these grid lines. And I do that just by selecting them. Make sure not to select here, because if I select sort of in the middle and hit delete, okay, that was pretty safe. Excel must have fixed the, used to be I could hit delete and just delete the whole chart that way as on accident. But I want to make sure I've got the grid lines selected. So instead of, the big dots all over, I want the little blue dots on each grid line. And I can then just hit delete and delete the vertical grid lines and the horizontal grid lines, because usually in professionally published graphs, we don't show grid lines at all. We just sort of assume that folks can take a look and line things up. Or if we need to be really precise, I've even done it on things like phase diagrams for steel. If we need to be really precise, I mean, we need to grab a ruler even sometimes to know exactly where on a phase diagram we are. So I'm going to also reformat these axes slightly. I'm going to go and change them to black, right? Make them black, because right now they're sort of a light gray. If I click off, you can see this is now darker than the y-axis. And I'm also going to select tick marks, major and outside. And that's sort of what most professional publications use as a standard. I am then going to do the same exact thing outside tick marks and black for the y-axis. And now those two things match. So sort of the last thing was also the last thing that we did when we did the X bar chart video was the limits on Y. This one's a lot easier, frankly, because notice we're set to auto over here. So Excel is automatically calculating this. And the reason we want to set them is that as soon as we do, auto goes away. And that means Excel, like if we plot tomorrow's and all this data is shifted up, Excel is going to automatically shift these axes so that the data can fit. We don't want that. We want to visually be able to look at one day to the next and be able to see a sort of a visual comparison and on the same scale. So as soon as we type something in here, right, auto goes away, it says reset, but now it'll be locked at 0. Like we'll never move off at 0. I'm going to do the same thing, and I actually like the way this one is spaced, so I'm going to set them the same as they were. 0.1, enter. Oh, it doesn't like 0.1. 0.2. Okay, it'll take that. So what if I do 0.1, enter now? There we go. Sometimes we just have to be smarter than Excel. So again, and then the tick marks, again, I like the way the tick marks are. I'm just going to try to get it to let me do my own spacing. 0.01. There we go. That way, now that it doesn't say auto over here, it's sort of locked in Excel as we add days. If we add days to this chart, or if we, use the same settings to plot tomorrow, we can make sure that they're on the same scale. That way we have a visual indication of what these data are trying to tell us. And then, of course, the final step, in this, second to last, I should say, now that I remember, I like to get rid of, notice there's a border here around this chart by default. When we paste this into like a Word document, you will see that border. I'm not a fan of that look, so I'm just going to get rid of it. I'm going to select my chart. I'm going to come over here to border, and where it says automatic, I'm just going to hit no line. Now the border went away, so if I paste this into Excel, it'll sort of blend in. It'll be white on white, and you'll just sort of see this just like it appears with no border around it. Now for the final step, this is just for me. I prefer to set everything to the computer modern font. Because I use LaTeX so much, and that's the default font in LaTeX, odds are strong if I were doing this, I would be including it in a LaTeX document anyway. So I like my graph fonts to match, what the document font is going to be. So that is our R chart now. So we've got our X bar and our R chart. We've got our control limits in place. These can easily be expanded now if we get more data, or the data set, the original data set came from a lab activity in one of my courses. And this data actually included 2 more attributes, so 6 more columns of actual measurement data. And it also included 3 days, 3 24-hour periods. So if we wanted to expand it out, we could add the rest of the shifts and actually do 1 X bar and 1 R chart for each. Or we could do it like we did and do 1 per day and divide each day by shift, and we could compare day to day and shift to shift that way. So there's a whole lot of opportunity to expand this. But that is, the process for creating this R chart and sort of the basics of how to get that done and how to get sort of control lines in there as well, which is a handy trick to know that can pop up a lot. Yeah, so that is, like I said, basically all of the tricks. We now have complete X bar and R charts ready to go. So I want to thank you for watching, especially if you lasted through the last little bit, which was me being picky about formatting. But the devil is in the details. If we take time to be conscientious about how these things appear, ultimately our final product will look more professional. So thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again in a future Excel how-to video.